Okay, thank you everyone and welcome back. We are moving on to the sixth module of our course on neuroscience and neuroreligion. Today we have a very renowned scientist, better say a neurologist, very much active in the field of the intersection between brain and belief. Professor Rüdiger says. I met Professor Rüdiger first in the month of July in Oxford. It was really amazing to listen to his presentation there in Oxford. Then it occurred to me that I must really make use of Professor Rüdiger for you too. I invited him then and there, and he very kindly obliged. And today we are really privileged to be listening to him. Professor Rüdiger is professor of neurology at Heinrich-Heine-University in Düsseldorf in Germany. His fields of study, and he is best known for his researches in the fields of internal medicine, neuroscience, and cognition. Rüdiger mostly deals with neuroscience, posterior parietal cortex, motor cortex, stroke, and brain mapping. Much of his study explores neuroscience and its relationship to cerebral blood flow. The various areas that Professor Rüdiger examines in his posterior parietal cortex study include temporal cortex, sensory system cortex. His motor cortex research is multidisciplinary, incorporating perspectives in precentral gyrus and transcranial magnetic stimulation. And his most cited work includes a neural basis for general intelligence with 810 citations as per the data available on the web. I know this is an old data. Diffusion and perfusion weighted MRI and Broca's region subserves imagery of motion, and many such scholarly papers published by Professor Rüdiger. In the dialogue between neuroscience and belief and neuroscience and religion, Professor Rüdiger is a much sought after scholar. And despite his strong professional scientific practicing background in neurology, his interdisciplinary skills are to be appreciated. That is why he is here. So he is such a rare talent who can dialogue from neurology as a neurologist who can dialogue with belief, philosophy, theological, philosophical implications of religious belief, and so on. So this will be our procedure for today. Professor Rüdiger will be speaking to us for about 20 minutes on belief and believing, a cognitive neuroscience approach. Then this will be mainly an interview, this session. I will be asking a number of questions to Professor Rüdiger. Then we will invite questions from you participants. You can post your questions in the chat box or ask them directly to Professor Rüdiger. Thank you, Professor, for joining us. We are indeed honored to have you on this floor. Over to you, Professor Rüdiger.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Pamplani. I'm delighted to be invited to give this presentation on a topic which I have been interested in for a couple of years. And this is my first slide showing that I will be talking about beliefs and believing. And given my background, I will focus on the cognitive neuroscience approach concerning these terms. And I just will give you a brief overview, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussion thereafter. So this is the starting point of the neuroscience model of believing, which we have been developing over the years in the context of the so-called cognition research. You see on the left-hand side that there is information coming from the external world, the environmental work, and this information enters the brain, is encoded in the brain, following the neurophysiological processes of sensory perception. And this information is multimodal, can be visual, can be auditory, can be somatosensory, and this is combined and integrated then with an internal information, an affective stage or affective state, and this internal information is comes in as a process of valuation, and this valuation is a valuation of effort and reward, or cost and benefit. This internal information then provides an effective charging of the externally perceived information, and both types of information are encoded in the brain, and this is what we call a neural probabilistic personal representation, or a belief, as you can see here. Then this information is used in the sense of predictive coding for generating actions. These actions then have a prediction error related to the process of prediction, and are fed backwards into the system. And either if the prediction error is small or negligible, then the action will be reinforced and the beliefs will be reinforced, or if the information is new and unexpected, the beliefs will be modulated accordingly. So this goes on very fast. We are aware of. However, we may become aware of our beliefs and what we believe, and we may become aware of our actions. And as it concerns our beliefs, we are then in the position, after their content have been become aware to us, to formulate, to articulate that, to express it verbally in a way that is called propositions. And of course, there is a cognitive feedback loop as well, and either the actions may be approved by conscious considerations, or we may also likewise be in the position that we have the idea to act further and to express it verbally, but inhibit further behavior. So there are two feedback loops. One feedback loop which takes place very fast and below consciousness, and then a cognitive feedback loop after the information has become aware to us. Now, the important point here, which I would like to make, is related to the box, in the box around the word beliefs. And this box just indicates that we are not in the position to access our beliefs, our own beliefs directly, or that we are not able in the position to access the beliefs other people may hold. What we can only do is that we can observe the behavior, and then by means of inference, active inference, we judge that, or we come to the conclusion that the reason and the cause why a person has acted in a certain way was brought forward by the actual belief he was pursuing or was holding at that point in time. So what is clear is that there is a neural representation of the information that entered the brain, and this is a neural script held in cerebral cortex, but to label this as a belief is something which is done after inferring what was observed on the behavioral level using cognitive approaches. Now, I would like to expand on the information that is being processed, and this information can be categorized into 3 different types, and that is of great importance. What the environmental information that we process or perceive either pertains to more or less, but in principle, static objects. And that is the second category. The information is related to events that are characterized by a certain beginning and a certain end. And this is the third category, the information is just presented in a verbal form, and this is something which is characteristic for us as humans, presented as narratives. And now we have the first person introspection into these different beliefs that result from processing these different types of information. And concerning objects, at least in the European languages, we have the situation that we have in various different languages, very similar use of language, such that as it concerns objects, we would say, I believe that is so and so. And differently, when it concerns events, we very often see events in relation to behavior between humans or humans and objects, and in particular, as I said, between humans. These events then are labeled in an introspective fashion such that one would say, I believe him or I believe her in what she is saying, for instance. And the third category related to narratives resulting in conceptual beliefs is expressed in an introspective fashion as I believe in God, for example, I believe in democracy, or I believe in love, for instance. So this is the first person introspection, and on a more on a different level, which concerns the third person inference level, objects result in empirical beliefs, events result in relational beliefs, and narratives result in conceptual beliefs. So we have an information-based categorization of these 3 different types of beliefs: beliefs about objects, beliefs about events, and beliefs about narratives. Now, on a meta-analytical description, these beliefs concerning objects and events can be called primal beliefs. And this is the case because these beliefs are made on sensory information that is not language bound. You get information via your senses and form beliefs just on a sensory-based processing level, which does not involve any type of language processing. Please remember in my previous slide in which I showed that belief formation goes on very fast and below consciousness awareness, and that also means without verbal articulation. There are different other labels for these primal beliefs, as for instance, primals, biases, or schemas. Anyway, these primal beliefs represent the personal experience with the environment. Now, on the same meta-analytic descriptive level concerning conceptual beliefs, we can differentiate a number of subtypes, and this is a typical English expression. We differentiate religious beliefs, political beliefs, autobiographical beliefs, and so forth. So as it comes to the question, what are religious beliefs? Those are meta-analytic descriptions. It is an inference, as I said previously, of observed behavior, and also of the narratives and the rituals that were used for building up these conceptual beliefs. Now, conceptual beliefs are closely related to memory functions. They are transmitted verbally by testimony and reinforced by ritual activities that typically people participate in. They have a strong implication of trust, which is brought about by repetition and the ease of processing. And related to that are promises that are conveyed by narratives, as, for instance, examples are freedom, equality, salvation, and so forth. So these are three important characteristics of conceptual beliefs, which is the narrative, the testimony in relation with rituals, the notion of trust, which is related to repetition and ease of processing, and then the promises that are implicated in many of these narratives, as I showed you here with these three examples. Now, on the other hand, conceptual beliefs may lose their impact and fade for three reasons. And one reason is, for instance, the advances of the sciences. Think back of the generation of the heliocentric worldview, and another example would be the evolution theory. There are also changes in social reality, particularly in Western Europe, but probably you in India experience this as well, that the societies become more and more multicultural, with different faith groups living next to each other. And the third point, and that is important, particularly in our times as well, there is the notion of deception, of involuntary and voluntary deception. One very crude example are the propagation of so-called fake news, and as we can discuss this if there is interested in that. So I now show you one example of a religious belief, which means a conceptual belief which highlights or is related to the notion of religiosity. Religiosity is not religion, but religiosity is a human capability. And this is one of our earlier studies that were performed in those years by Dr. Azari, a psychologist. And I show you briefly the results. We had a group of Christian believers and a control group that was age and sex matched. And the task for these subjects was to recite Psalm 23 while they were scanned. The question that was important for those subjects was, what does this psalm mean to me? And from their biographic information, we knew that this psalm had a very large impact on them, because this was the basis for their conversion to a Protestant faith group. And whenever they recited these subjects, whenever they recited this particular psalm, they had the impression that they had a direct contact and conversation with God. Interestingly, the exploration of their mood or affective state by the so-called Panner score showed that reciting this particular psalm changed their affect to a, in a sense that a negative affect with which they entered the investigation changed to a less negative state after they had recited this particular psalm. On the right-hand side, you see the activation patterns related to this recital, and you can see this is not just one area, but there are areas in the dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex. There are areas in the precuneus. There are some tiny activations also in the cerebellum, but in particular, there's a very strong activation in the so-called pre-supplementary motor area. And this was in those years was very difficult to explain, and we pursued this further over the years, and this slide shows that the pre-supplementary motor area is a very important area for contextual coding of action. This is not an activation study. This is a connectivity study, and the red area is the so-called pre-supplementary motor area. The green area is closely adjacent ventrally to this area, and you can see this on the right-hand panel in the sagittal slice, whilst on the left-hand side you see the brain from above, and you can see the two brain convexities. Now, the supplementary motor area is the green area and is connected. This is in the middle of the brain in both hemispheres and is connected to the motor cortex, and this reflects the function of the supplementary motor area, which is online movement orchestration. In contrast, the red area in the middle in front of that is connected to the lateral premotor cortex, the lateral prefrontal cortex, and in particular in the dorsal parts of the brain, bilaterally in the parietal cortex. And those areas related or can be interpreted as areas that are of relevance for coding of action, but in the sense of contextual coding of action. And you remember that in one of my previous slides, I showed that beliefs are in the position to generate actions by predictive coding, and this predictive coding is the function that is brought forward by the orchestrated activity of all these areas that are coded in red here in this overlay map on a brain. So this reflects then both information that is processed subconsciously as well as consciously, and is related to or can be seen as the neural network underlying belief formation and belief formation. I will leave it with that. So I'm now concluding my presentation by summing up and conveying the key points to you. The first point is believing. Believing is a central brain function, irrespective of the information that is being processed, that determines a person's behavior. The processes of believing occur outside conscious awareness. I think this is a very important point because we stress here that information processing takes place outside conscious awareness in the first place, and some of that information that is being processed may enter consciousness. It's not the other way around. Decision-making is based on believing. This would be the next point. Decision-making very clearly involves preferences rather than rational cognitive weighing of alternatives, which is closely related to the function of believing. The third-person inference allows to categorize beliefs in different types of beliefs related to the information that is being processed, information coming from the environment and is being processed. And communicating beliefs involves awareness. Now, I would like to conclude by thanking my collaborators, Professor Angel, who is theologist, Professor Pelluzian, who is a professor of psychology, and the Volkswagen Foundation, who supported this work. And for those who are interested in reading more about the nature of belief and believing, we had recently proceedings in Frontiers of Psychology on the topic of cognition, which means science of beliefs and believing. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear Professor Rüdiger, for that informed presentation, explaining to us briefly the complexities and intricacies of the cognitive aspects of believing and the neurological researches that you yourself have conducted along with your companions, and sharing those insights were really stimulating. We gained a lot from your presentation. Thank you so much. Professor, to bring the best out of your scholarship, let me pose a couple of questions to you.
Yeah.
Professor, say if you are done with the presentation and if you do not wish to use your PowerPoint further, you can stop sharing now.
Right. Okay. I do that. That's good.
Yeah. Okay, Professor, maybe I will begin with the second conclusion that you made. It was very interesting that the process of cognitive believing occurs outside conscious awareness.
Yes.
You made that point in your conclusion, no? I was wondering whether this goes along with the observations of and findings of Andrew Newberg, Carol Albright, and so on, who claimed that humans have an innate capacity to know God. We are biologically programmed to know and interpret God. Or this unconscious operation of believing cognitively within our brain. Does it suggest for the biological programming of humans for belief in something supernatural? Or are all these neuro faith believing, are these factors purely cognitive, purely natural? Is there any role for the supernatural in our believing? I will appreciate clarity on these 2 points for our group, Professor.
Yeah, very interesting. A very important question. I will respond to that, and I hope that I can make the point clear from my perspective. If not, please ask further questions about it. The point of departure that I chose, or the new information that I presented, was that believing is a more fundamental brain function that mostly, as I said, and I would like to restate this here, mostly occurs outside conscious awareness. It also takes place whenever we process sensory, which is not language-bound information. So it's a very, very fundamental, very and central brain function. Now, we usually deal with our environment, and we have to evaluate the perceived information in the sense of is it beneficial for me or is it dangerous for me, and we are in the position to make this evaluation very fast, and we know from neuroscience that the anatomical structures that are involved in this value attribution are in the position that they receive the information from the environment via parallel channels within a few milliseconds, and a few milliseconds is far below that what is needed for processing something consciously aware. So this information goes on very rapidly. Now, if something is called natural or supernatural, is a post hoc inferential thinking. From a so-called ex ante view, bottom-up information processing, this is not clear. There is an interpretation. I would say yes, we agree with Andrew Newberg that information is being processed and evaluated in the brain and generates and able to generate neural representations that we may call beliefs. However, the question whether we consider those we consider this input as natural or supernatural, this is a post hoc interpretation of the information in the signals. Usually our senses, we are equipped with senses, and we are processing sensory information such that we are in the position to act in our environment adequately. And this would mean that we build up an internal, I say, worldview, such that our perceptions match reality as well as possible. From that perspective, it is irrelevant whether this information may be called natural or supernatural. To call something supernatural means to reflect about the information that has been processed, consciously aware, and to claim that the information is not does not correspond to reality, and for that reason may be called supernatural. This is post hoc inferential thinking.
Thank you, Professor. Going along with this question, we know there are a lot of researches going on as to the neurocognitive grounds of atheism or non-belief. If we claim that believing occurs or somewhat unconsciously outside our conscious awareness, why is there non-belief? Or if there is a biological propensity within us towards belief, why is that some people are not able to believe? Are there also neurological cognitive grounds for atheism also. I am making category error here, but I am deliberately making it. I am not exactly distinguishing between non-belief and atheism, but for our popular understanding, I will be curious to know, neurologically, are there any grounds for non-belief?
Yes.
Is atheism basically a rational and free choice?
Yes, interesting. Interesting question. And this is and also a challenging question, and goes down to the discussion of what believing is. I would spontaneously like to answer that people are not in the position not to believe. We all believe in our perceptions. This does not mean that we all believe in God, or that we all believe in religious stories. However, we believe in that what we perceive, and we have this is fundamental for us, because the environment changes rapidly, continuously, within seconds. And we need to figure out which type of information is meaningful for us. And we believe then that what we think is meaningful, which could be beneficial on one side, or could be dangerous on the other side. To claim not to believe, I would consider as a reflective cognitive consideration that ignores, that what is going on in us as humans below our conscious awareness. And is restricted to the stipulation that any type of supernatural agents are illusionary, and maybe produced by spiritual or religious believers. But that's an interpretation.
Thank you, Professor. Before I move on with my question, let me pick up then one question in the chat box. This is from Christopher. This is directly a scientific question, Professor. What part of the brain controls believing?
Can you repeat it?
Which part of the brain is responsible for believing?
Okay, yes, right. Yes, I would like to answer this question. I showed you the green-red map of brain connectivity. And I pointed out that concerning believing, the red areas are so important. And these are these maps, or this map showed brain areas that are connected with each other. So whilst in the beginning, when brain imaging was introduced, we had the idea that brain function can be focused or is produced by just one brain area. We now have come to the conclusion, because we had a corresponding evidence, that complex neural functions, as for instance, language production, as for instance, higher order somatosensory information processing, and of course also believing, involve a number of brain areas, and that these higher order functions are the product of a concerted orchestration of many brain areas, and those areas that come into play are those areas that are related to the type of information that is being processed. So it's not a single area that is responsible for belief formation, but it's the result of a network function in the brain.
Okay, Professor. The next question, which Lawrence Godfrey is posing, is exactly the similar one I wanted to ask you. The question is this. Africans are said to be notoriously religious. This is a statement from African theologian MPT. Africans are notoriously religious. Does it mean, so in trying to contextualize your presentation, Professor, does it mean believing is cultural or irrespective of cultural factors? Are there groups of people that believe more than others? And if that is the case, what creates the differences if believing is a natural phenomenon in all humans?
Yes.
Got the question, Professor. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Regarding this question, I would like to restate once more that believing is, in the first place, not related to any type of language function. It's related to sensory motor processing. When it comes to information processing of language, in which are presented as narratives, then it's important to consider what is being conveyed in these narratives. And what is conveyed by the rituals that are developed by different cultures in relation to these narratives. And both the narratives as well as the ritual behavior or the ritual acts are very much and fundamentally influenced by the cultural background of a certain population. That means that what people believe in terms of conceptual beliefs, and that, to repeat this, in terms of autobiography, in terms of religion, and in terms of politics, is something which is heavily influenced by the given cultural background. And for that reason, this cultural background may result in populations that appear to others as highly religious, whilst others may appear as people who do not believe in religious contents, for instance, because they were brought up in an environment in which science is being evaluated as more important as religion or religious contents. So whenever whenever believing concerns conceptual beliefs that are based on narratives, we have a very strong influence on the cultural background which produced these narratives.
Okay, Professor, thank you. Next question from Gerald Grutz in California. Is belief a secondary function of the brain? Is not trust in the beneficence of existence more primary as we experience as babies? Is belief a secondary function of the brain? That is the focus. It's not a trust. That is what we perceive primarily as babies. That's the point of Professor Jerry's question, I think.
Yeah, and a very interesting question. Thank you for that. My answer would be twofold. First, there is a very strong similarity or connection of belief and trust. That would be one answer. The other is belief is not a function. Belief is the result of a function. Belief is the result of the processes of believing. And I, in my presentation, showed which processes are involved. So belief, as I said, belief is the result of the processes of believing. It is a inference, an inferential label for that what from the point of processing neurophysiology or processing neuroscience would be called a neural probabilistic representation. So belief is not a function. Belief is the result of a brain function.
Thank you. Professor, next question is rather philosophical or metaphysical in nature. This is from a physicist, Anju Abraham. She's asking the idea of mind that is presupposed in your sort of researches. Are they have some common platform with the idea of consciousness as understood by quantum mechanics? This is a highly debated area of research in quantum physics also. What is mind and consciousness? Does neuroscience share some common platform with contemporary physics, especially quantum physics? That is the point of the question, I think.
Yes, that's an interesting question, and this is highly debated right now. For aspects that I have not been alluded to in my presentation, I could imagine that this would be an interesting type of interpretation. But when we discuss concepts like mind and brain, we need to define what this is. And I think we can define from a neuroscientific point of view in a quite straightforward manner what a brain could be. But the definition becomes hard when it comes to the question what a mind is. For that or for instance a soul, just to name this as well. Those are in my point of view very loose concepts that we should try to avoid. They also make the point that there is a particular space for consciousness, which may be attributed to the mind. This is also a very problematic question, because we need to define what consciousness is, and this is a topic of intensive research, and has not been clarified in a sufficient manner as yet. So for that reason, I would try. I would be very cautious and to use terms like, for instance, mind, because then we leave the level of physically measurable brain activities.
Good, Professor. One point I wish to call your attention to some of the criticisms against the claims of neuro-religion also. You are familiar with Persinger's helmet. By stimulating certain regions of the brain, one can have religious experience. Some other critics claim that certain drugs, say for example ketamine, what is used in anesthesia, can be useful for generating religious experience. Therefore, the so-called God experience are mere hallucinatory experiences which can be externally generated. What would be your response to this sort of critical observations about this sort of researches, Professor? I will be curious to know.
Yeah, that's interesting research you're referring to, one has to be. I think one can make some claims about that, but there are also notions of caution that have to be discussed in this context as well. Well, the point being is. Of course, you can induce by physical measures, the so-called helmet, or pharmacologically, you can induce abnormal states of neural activity, and you would induce a sensation of the treated subject by externally or internally by pharmaca, in a way activating certain parts of the brain that induce such kinds of feelings or even hallucinations. The helmet, Pershinger's helmet, for instance, particularly is focused on the temporal lobe, and in the temporal lobe, affective processing plays a great role. So that what is induced may, in these subjects, may reiterate or reflect what they, in spontaneous manners, would have experienced as, for instance, mystically or spiritually. However, so this is well explainable, and this is in line with other evidence from neuroscience work or neurological work, or in subjects that just simply reflect an activation of brain areas or a network of brain areas that is operational for producing a certain sensation, a certain affectively loaded sensation. This, however, does not bring us closer to the question of whether this is related to God.
Thank you, Professor. Next is from Wycliffe Musinger. This question seems to be a bit in the abstract. Perhaps, Wycliffe, you will have to clarify that what is the psychology behind seeing is believing? Seeing
Yes.
is believing. Is it clear to you, Professor Rüdiger? If not,
Yeah, that's very good.
Okay.
I like this
Framing.
metaphor because it it shows that that seeing or what you have seen before is in a way encoded in the brain, and when you see it a second time or many times later on, you will recognize it, and the more repetitions you have, the more you believe in the reality of that what you perceive, so this is on the behavioral level. On the neuroscientific level, we have evidence that a certain part in the brain is particularly related to this to this memory or visual memory, or as what's called the mind's eye. And this is the so-called precuneus in the brain that conveys the visual memory of previous experience.
Thank you, Professor. Maybe I will take you back to that question on atheism, Professor. You know, under the sponsorship of the Templeton Foundation, an international research project was done across Europe and America as to identify the causes of atheism. And this study was spread across 16 countries and spanning over 3 years, spending millions of dollars. The researchers claim that they interviewed or some 30,000 subjects were part of their research. I also was present for their concluding presentation at the capstone conference at the Natural History Museum in Oxford. The number one reason as the cause of atheism that the research identified was absence of religious socializations, lack of adequate religious socialization. That is the number one cause of atheism in the secularized West, it seems. Of course, in the Eastern countries, this may not be true, but this is the case. I would appreciate your comments on this finding. And if that is the case, I'm wondering whether the excessive privatization of religion and religious practices is not that also a factor for adding to the absence of religious socialization. Therefore, this excessive privatization of religious practices or religiosity in the post-liberal society, is that a healthy practice? Does it appeal healthily to our neurocognitive properties? My question is a bit complex. In nutshell, this is this. How far true is it to claim that absence of religious socialization is the number one cause of atheism? Cognitively, does that argument stand? If that is the case, in responding to that, what should we have a rethinking about the practice of religion altogether?
Yes, interesting question. What you say. My answer to that may be perhaps somewhat provocative in the first place, and I would say it cannot be excluded, to put it that way, it cannot be excluded that those people who claim to be atheistic have put themselves into the position that atheism is something similar to them as religion to other people. So atheism can be a faith. And I leave it with that. And that has the interesting implication that socialization then could take place in such an atheistic environment. One has to be very critical about this, on the other hand, you may say, in terms of agnostic, of an agnostic attitude, you may argue that you cannot be sure whether God exists or not, because this is not because this cannot be clarified by our contemporary scientific methods. These people are in danger to put for themselves science into a supernatural dimension, so that science may be something what to them what religion is to other people. That it would be a kind of provocative response I would like to
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Very clarifying. And next question from Ferdinand. The point of the question is this, Professor. See, medicine disconnects the reality of the wound from the brain. When brain is injured, we administer medicine and we are relieved from pain, but not exactly from the injury. Likewise, medicine disconnects the brain from the reality of the wound. Using this analogy, Ferdinand is asking, what is that is disconnecting the faith from the brain? What is that is disconnecting faith from the brain? Is it merely a concealment, as in the case of medication? Probably that is the point of Ferdinand's question, I think.
Well, that's an interesting question. The first point, wound and pain, the separation, is an interesting one, and perhaps it's a kind of metaphor for separating faith from brain. Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay, faith disconnects from the brain. Thank you. One new message. What is that? Is from Sister Jane. If believing is connected with the brain, is it innate for human being to believe, or is it a choice? You
Yes.
partly already responded to that. Maybe you wish to make a quick recap of that.
Yes. It is innate.
Something
it is
innate.
Believing, I would say, in response to this question, we are born to believe, and have no choice for doing so.
Yeah, that is a very powerful statement you primarily made also. We are made to believe, and there is no reason why we should not be believing.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good, Professor. Professor, maybe I will repeat that popular question often coined in the discussions on neuroscience and religion as to, did God create brain or brain creates God? Is there ground for believing in a personal God, a creator God, given the cognitive neurological understanding of religion? Can we believe in a creator God who created brain? Or is God, the very idea of God itself, is it not merely a construct of the brain?
Yes, very fundamental and very difficult question. I think I would respond to that as follows. We have a problem and we have no means to get to agree upon what God is. We need a definition, but we cannot define God because any trial to do so would do injustice to God because God cannot be described by human terms. And for that reason, it is for that reason, it is not possible to answer this question that you asked me in one way or the other. Yes, I leave it with that.
Yeah, this is how Andrew Newberg and his team would answer this question. God created brain so that brain may create its God. What they mean is that there's a complementary relationship between brain and God epistemically. We are endowed with the capacity to know God. Therefore, God has to create its God. But in the first place, God has to create brain so that brain may discover God. That is the idea that they are willing to give, I think.
Yeah, you're right. But the question is, what is God?
Basically, that is
then we come back to that. Yes, right.
Sure. Thank you, Professor. Okay, then thank you, everyone. I think we will wind up for today. May I invite Professor Gerald Grudson? He's the president of the Global Ministries University, California, to express our gratitude on behalf of our team to Professor Rudy.
As we go forward with our religion and science program, it's interesting that this is a global effort we're undertaking in this program. We have students in Europe, we have students and professors in Europe, in the United States, Africa, and India. As far as I know, it's one of the only programs of our kind that meets every week, and we're appreciative of your presence with us. So thank you very much, and we'll look forward to learning more about your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to discuss all these issues with you.
Wonderful. Thank you for your kind availability and insightful wisdom you shared with us. We look forward to a sustained interaction for our future cohorts also, Professor Rudy. Thank you. Bye for now.